Welcome to Ground Control, and I wanted to give you guys a first look at this little beauty. It is the Dancing Wings Hobby J3 FireBird Cub. This is not just a sub 250 gram bush plane. This is a sub 100 gram bush plane. And it has a brushless power system. I have got 6 flights on this plane so far. All of them this morning before I started this video. So during the build process, I put together a build slideshow which will follow this information part of the video. The color manual, the brochure that it comes with, it has a step-by-step guide. It's all color photos. But I think that the photos that I took during my build process are probably going to be a little more informative than the images and the steps that they have in the guide, because they have to be so brief and the pictures are small. So if you want to catch my build slideshow after this informational part of the video, the images are better, I think, than the images that are in the guide. I think the images are a little more detailed. I did deviate from the steps that they had specified in the manual simply because I felt some things would be easier if they were done later. And of course everything's got to be glued, so I would work on one assembly, get it all glued together, give the glue time to set up. Then I would go and work on a different assembly, and then come back and work on the first assembly again, and then I kept going back and forth like that. That way I could maximize my time, and the total time for the build wouldn't take as long. And I did deviate from a couple of the steps they had in there, because when you're putting in the servos and the rigging and the control horns and everything, it's a lot easier if you're going to leave off as many of the panels as you can while you're doing that, so you can get your hands in the fuselage. So the steps, the pictures, the images that you will see are in the specific order in which I did everything. So hopefully that will help some of you out who are interested in building this plane. This was sent to me courtesy of Banggood. It was a complete bind-in-flight kit. So it came with everything that I needed, less the flight Lipo, the flight battery. So everything was packed into this little box. The material that it's made out of is PP foam board. It's kind of a flexible, almost like an EPP foam, so it has a lot of reinforcement. The wingspan is 600mm wingspan. It's a 23.6 inch wingspan. That is a pretty good size micro plane for something that has an all-up weight that is under 100 grams. I was astonished. I thought, when I started building this, I thought, I don't think this is going to be below 100 grams by the time I get it all done. But it was, and it comes with the brushless motor. It's a Power X. It's an MC1108 4000 kV brushless motor, and this is designed for a 2S power system too. So that brushless motor, and it's swinging a 5-inch prop, and on a 2S Lipo on a plane that weighs less than 100 grams, this plane has got some power to it. You will not complain about power. The receiver is an AEO. It's an RX154E DSM2 DSMX 7-channel receiver. It has no gyro. It's just a standard receiver. But it does have, it's a full 7-channel, and it has a built-in 2S 7-amp brushless ESC, which made the build very, very compact and very lightweight, since I didn't have to have a separate ESC for the brushless motor. It comes with this orange 5x3 ABS prop. It looks like it's got about a 4mm hub on it. This is actually this motor is designed for a T-mount prop. So this came with a little adapter that uses, the rubber bands to hold the prop on. Well, I tried using one of those a long time ago in a kit that I received. I can't stand those. So what I did was I took one of my favorite T-mount props, the HQ 5x3 2-blade T-mount prop. They're very durable, very efficient, produce a lot of thrust. So I mounted that directly to the motor. That prop did not come with the kit, so be aware of that. It comes with 4 2-gram servos. I was kind of surprised. I was kind of expecting, 1.7 gram servos, but this came with 4 2-gram servos. It's got dual servos underneath the ailerons, one servo for the rudder and one for the elevator. The recommended LiPo for this, and I don't know where they came up with this, but it's a 2S 150 milliamp hour to the 2S 200 milliamp hour LiPo. Well, the smallest LiPos that I have in my inventory are 2S 300 milliamp hour LiPos that weigh 17 grams. It's going to be, I just did a search. It's going to be pretty hard to even find a 2S 150 to 200 milliamp hour LiPo, at least it was for me. So I've got 6 flights on it so far. I've flown it with my 2S 300 milliamp hour LiPos that weigh 17 grams. I've flown it with a couple of 2S LiPos that are 400 milliamp hour that weigh 20 grams. This plane had no problem carrying those 20 gram LiPos, 400 milliamp hour LiPos. And I would guess the way it was handling with the heaviest LiPo that I flew it with, I think that this plane's going to be able to handle 25 grams of 2S LiPo easily. I don't think it's going to be a problem. And it's still going to have plenty of power to make some big, huge, wide loops. So don't even worry about that. With a 23.6 inch wingspan, you won't even tell. You're flying with a 25 gram battery in it. So the recommended all-up weight on this is 85 grams with a 2S 150 to 200 milliamp hour LiPo. 85 grams. 85 grams. For a plane that has a 23.6 inch wingspan, 600 millimeter wingspan with a brushless power system on a 2S LiPo, not a 1S LiPo, 2S LiPo. And I have no doubt that you would be around 85 grams if you had a 2S 150 milliamp hour LiPo. But that is absolutely astounding. I don't know how they made this thing so lightweight, but they did. So kudos to them for keeping the weight down. Okay, so everything that's in the box, I actually ended up with some spare material. I don't know if I was supposed to end up with spare material, but I certainly did. But there are a couple of things that I deviated from that I'll talk about in a minute. One of them was the prop, which I've already spoken about. I was not going to use that prop on that prop adapter with those rubber bands. That just wasn't going to happen. Okay, so there's also a very large section of Velcro in here. I don't know where I would put all that Velcro, but I'm glad that they put it in there. I just used a small section of it. Okay, so you get an extra connector too. It's the connector that goes from the motor to the ESC. It's like, they're like 3 1mm bullets all put together. I really considered ordering some of those because they're so nice, and especially for these Micro 2S power systems. So I may go ahead and order some of those from them because I think they sell those on their website, Dancing Wings Hobby. Okay, so I had some extra carbon. I don't know how I ended up with extra carbon, but I did. I did not put the retainers on top of the control horns. I just put dabs of glue on the top of the control horns to hold those in there. I mean, it's so lightweight. I didn't want to put the keepers on, and if I ever need to pull those control horns out, you really mess up the phone trying to get the keepers off of them. There was 4, 5, or 6 steel washers in here. They look like 3 to 4mm washers, so I'm not even sure what you would use those for. Maybe for the prop adapter. I don't know, but I didn't use any of those. It has some plastic keepers for the for the wheels on the struts, and this has the most robust landing gear I have seen of a plane this size. I'm real happy about that too. And the wheels on it roll really, really well, so they put a high quality main landing gear on here. The tail wheel that they put on here was this little metal piece, looks like a lollipop. Yeah, I wasn't going to use that either. Now they did put some of these real thin plastic hinges in here, and they put several of them in there, so I'm real happy about that. The place where I used one of those was right here you know, where you install the rudder and the vertical stabilizer, and then you've got this piece, you know, that's not connected to the fuselage. So what I did was I just cut a slot in it and the tail end of the fuselage, and put some glue on one of those little plastic hinges and just slotted it down in there, and it worked like a champ. That's the first time I've ever used one of those, so I may use those in the future. So I'm glad they sent a lot of spares. So I think that pretty much does it. Everything else is in the plane except for the spare parts that I ended up with. And like I said, I don't know. Oh, they put an extra band in here. The main wing is rubber banded onto the fuselage. I have never flown a plane where it had the main wing rubber banded on, but now I have. Okay, so I stated that that I had deviated from not putting on the stock tail wheel. So I had this little tail wheel that I salvaged from another microplane. I can't even remember what plane it came off of, but it's got this little curved plastic portion with a stem right in the center of it. So I just cut a slot in the bottom of the fuselage and glued that in there, and it works like a champ. And I certainly like that a lot better than that little metal lollipop that they put in the kit. That was one of the things that I didn't care for. Okay, so a couple of the other things where I deviated, let me see, where I deviated from the build or what was in the kit, the prop, the tail wheel, and then these are full length ailerons. I mean, they go all the way to the wingtips, and they're made out of that thin PP board. Well, I thought about cutting into it and slotting it and putting a piece of carbon rod in it, but what I elected to do to keep the ailerons from flexing, and this worked really, really well, when I went out there to do the maiden, I had my aileron set for 100% dual rate, and I have them connected, so I have not the maximum amount of movement on them, but just right there. You know, I'm down one hole on the control horn from having maximum movement on the ailerons. So almost every factory plane I've had so far has really had terrible roll rate. You know, not a lot of authority on the ailerons. So when I first went out there, I had my aileron set for 80%, and I thought, you know what, I probably had better max those out. This is not going to have a very good roll rate if I don't. So I set them to 100%. And man, did I have aileron authority. And even though I had, I think, 60% expo in it, the ailerons were really, really twitchy on the maiden flight. So I cut those back down. I'm not sure. I know I cut them back down to at least 80%. They might be at 70% now. And I still have a really good roll rate and very good aileron authority. So don't worry about that. But what I did was I took 1mm solid carbon rod, and from where the control horn is all the way out to where it starts its curve on the aileron, I glued that 1mm carbon rod to the trailing edge of the aileron, both of them, to prevent the foam from warping when the servo was pushing it up. And that has worked out really well because I had much more aileron authority than I needed, and that is seldom the case on these microplanes. So I was really happy about that. And for a bush plane, it has an excellent roll rate with it. So that's another area where I deviated from the build guide. Also, what I did was I went ahead and I cut you're supposed to slot the elevator, fold it over, and then bevel it 45 degrees, and then put some tape across it. Okay, so what I did was I cut the rudder and the elevator completely off, the horizontal stabilizer, the vertical stabilizer, and then I beveled it 45 degrees, and then I put it back together just completely with tape hinges. I didn't leave there's no paper on there. I cut it all the way through. The tape hinges offer less resistance than the paper does if you leave the paper on there. And I think it's a lot, I don't know, I think it's a lot more rigid, but flexible. You know what I mean? It doesn't wobble around or anything. So tape hinges, I think, are the way to go on the rudder and the elevator. That's just my opinion. I've been putting tape hinges on these micro aircraft for a very long time now, and I've never had a problem with them. And they work very well, and less stress on your servos too. Okay, so carbon rods, tail wheel, and then I told you I used the 2S 300 milliamp hour LiPo and a 2S 400 milliamp hour LiPo. Now with the 300 milliamp hour 2S LiPo, the weight 17 grams, that put my all up weight at 94.8 grams, under 95 grams all up weight. Okay, so then I put in my 2S 400 milliamp hour that weighs 20 grams. That's 97.8 grams up all up weight. I'm still under 100 grams. I'm under 98 grams all up weight with a 400 milliamp hour LiPo. So that's what I say. You know, if you put a 25 gram 2S LiPo in it, that would put you at, well, would put mine at 102.8 grams. So I'm telling you, this plane is not going to have any problem flying and performing extremely well at 102.8 grams. So when you see this kit and you see the recommended LiPo, don't worry about it. Don't pay any attention to that. It will fly fine with a larger LiPo in it. And it wasn't hard to get the CG. As a matter of fact, I've got my CG, I had my CG when I first went out at 28 millimeters, and when I ended flying, putting the 6 flights on it, I had my CG at 31 millimeters back from the lean edge of the wing. And with my 400 milliamp hour LiPo, it was a piece of cake to get the CG, and I still had room. If I needed to move the LiPo back further, I still had plenty of room to move the LiPo back. So don't worry about that either. You're going to be able to get your CG just fine with up to a 25 gram battery. Now, if you get past 25 grams, I don't know. But 25 gram LiPo, I don't think this is going to have any problem carrying. I know it's not going to have any problem carrying it. And with a 25 gram LiPo, I don't think you're going to have any problem getting your CG. Okay, so excellent, excellent handling, little plane. I've almost got it perfect. And as you'll see in the flight videos that I'll be publishing. But awesome little plane. And it handles up to a 5 mile an hour wind pretty darn well. I had some gusts out there today. I'd say we're getting 6 to 7. And then it gets a little bit to be a little bit of a handful. You get about 5 mile an hour wind, but fantastic flying plane. And calmer wind, it will handle like a much larger plane. So anyway, I'll go ahead and end it here. I will have links in the show notes to this kit. They have several different protocols of receivers that you can choose from if you order the bind and fly kit, or if you just want to buy the airframe kit and put in your own electronics. But I can tell you that I was really, really impressed with the performance and the flight time on this plane. I think that they hit it right on the money with the electronics that they chose for this plane, and especially the power system. The only thing that you're going to need in addition to what's in the box, like I said, a little bit of carbon reinforcement, a better tail wheel, and that HQ 5x3 T-mount prop. And you're going to love it. So I would recommend, given the fact that all their electronics are awesome for this plane, including the power system, I would opt for the bind and fly kit. Get everything that you need in the kit electronically. Put this prop on it. Put a little tail wheel on it. Put a little carbon reinforcement in the ailerons, and you're good to go. Okay, so I will leave you there. I want to thank Banggood for sending this kit for review. It's an awesome little plane. I'm having a lot of fun with it. I couldn't stop flying it, so I put 6 battery packs to it today. I will leave you now, and what is following is the slideshow of the images I took during the build process. So anyway, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the air. And stay tuned for the maiden launch.